What's going on, traders, and welcome to this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. Before we get going, I'd like to make your attention to the newsletter. If you're interested in receiving 5 to 10 swing trade ideas for the week, sign up at the link in the description. You can go to the website and put your email address in, and I'll send those to you sometime this afternoon. I apologize for last week. I was in New York, very busy, didn't get that out, but this week it will certainly go out today. The other thing I wanted to mention was the trending stocks analysis video. There's really no traction there, no comments, no likes, no interaction. Because of that, I'm not going to put that video out this week. If you would like to see it for next week, you got to leave me some comments down below. Stocks you want me to review and do an analysis on. Otherwise, the video will not happen. So that's where I'm at now. Let's get into the analysis. All right, starting off on our SPY weekly chart, as always, you can see that we did set a new all-time high here. We did barely poke through this level, and you can see we have 302.46. I think that the market goes a little bit higher to this trend line top, which if we zoom out a bit, again comes from these 3 touches. I think we go a little bit further than where we are now before we see a pullback, somewhere up to maybe 305, 306, somewhere in there. Before, again, we see the pullback that we're sort of expecting here. It feels like the market's very shakily moving up. Again, this was nothing more than just a break out of this balance. I don't think it really has much more footing than that. So again, I'm looking for personally a rejection above this trend line. Let's zoom into the daily. So you can see based on the daily chart that we do have some indecision up here at the highs. You can see we had an indecision candle, then a little pullback off of that level. But again, I think we do go a little bit higher before seeing that full pullback and a bigger move in the market sort of start. In the case that we do come up and get rejected, we want to see this level act as maybe a little intraday bounce on the way back down at 302.11. You might want to make it 302.46 based on the new all-time high here. And then after that, I'm really targeting the top end of this balance zone that we were in, which is sort of going to coincide with the 50 SMA as that sort of goes sideways a bit. Anything lower than that, this trend line might hold up. But really, once we get further down than that, we are looking at more of a major market reversal, and that will be something we have to deal with when it comes. On the upside, if we do get some sort of miraculous break, maybe 310, we're going to be in blue sky territory. So as always, we're playing whole and half dollar resistance on the way up, and any sort of intraday supports and resistances that form. If you look at the Qs, it's notable to note that it is relatively weak compared to the S&P. You can see we didn't even come up and set a new all-time high. We're not anywhere near our trend line that we have formed. You can see the candle that formed on Thursday is a very bearish candle with a long upper wick, almost right at resistance, and now we are seeing some sort of pullback from that. I'd be targeting somewhere to come back down into the support zone at 191. Anything lower than that is, again, the top of our balance zone here at 188, and I believe this is sort of due to the weakness in the FANG stocks, which we'll get to when we get to our companies, but something to note, like I said, the Qs are weaker than SPY, and we'll look at IWM. So IWM has again been sort of the wild card here. It made a monstrous move up, and now it's sort of showing a little bit of resistance at the resistance zone, which is to be expected. If we zoom in a little bit more, you can see Friday's candle not so nice with that long upper wick. However, after this big move, it's not, like I said, not surprising to see a little bit of consolidation here. It would be interesting to see what happens if the SPY puts in a new all-time high and the Russell also breaks out and above this resistance zone. You can see how much chop it's offered in the past. It would really be a key area to get above on the chart before any sort of major move higher happens. And again, representing all small caps, I think it'll really determine what happens with the market, whether or not we get rejected here. SPY gets rejected at its upper resistance trend line. The Q is sort of getting rejected earlier. It could set up the market for a nice move to the downside. Alrighty, getting into our companies now, you can see Apple did make a nice move in the upwards direction as well, but it sort of got a nice gap down on Friday. I think there was some news about a downgrade from an analyst. Anyways, you can see it looks like we had a nice little recovery in the evening, pushing prices back up for the close. In that case, I would think there's some support and some buyers back down here. It's almost a gap fill if you want to consider this little baby gap right here filled. That would be great, but we do have this gap above now, which might fill on any sort of positive market move on Monday. So look for a potential gap fill up to 223 practically. You can see our all-time high is up here at 233. Depending on how the market reacts to its all-time highs and getting up to that resistance trend line, we could see a move somewhere up to this zone and then a pullback, or we might not even make it up there, and this might sort of be the top here for Apple in our short term. We do have resistance here, obviously, where prices got rejected on Thursday. That's right around 226.50. And then our support below us is at 215.13. Anything lower than that, there's sort of this trend line that we can draw in here that looks a little something like this. Kind of steep, but a pullback into that wouldn't be anything crazy. Netflix has just been sort of doing its thing, dribbling lower. You can see we did start a base out here around 288.37. We are starting to put in a little bit of a floor here. No longer are we just consolidating in that range, so we might see a move back up into our resistance zone here. 50 SMA is coming down hard on it, so I would imagine that offers some really good resistance on any sort of move into that area. We can draw in our support level, which is sort of a little bit lower. You can see we have a double bottom here, more around 280, 291 instead of this level here. We can get rid of that. So this is sort of our support. We have a little resistance happening right here. You can see rejection, rejection again. So 300, I'd call it just the round number there, might act as resistance on any sort of move above. But if we get above 300, again, like I said, look for the zone in here and the 50 SMA to offer some really solid resistance. Tesla sort of having an ugly end to the week. Nice little topping candle here where we had a nice wick and then a move to the downside on Friday, although pretty small. I'd look for more of a pullback into our level here at 239.78. This comes from over here. Obviously, the 50 SMA will start to catch up with that as prices continue to move in the upwards direction. So look for that to act as sort of a super support. We do need to get now above, if we change this level to, that is our resistance point there at 253.54. If we can break above that, then I would target the gap fill, or not gap fill, but just more of the high from here and the 200 SMA at 265.82. Again, we covered the downside here. Next stop is 219 if that one gives. Here at 229. And then so on and so forth. 211 really being the line in the sand. If we go lower than that, then I think the downtrend is still in play. So BABA is still just tapping on this level that we keep talking about, but it does look like it's starting to see a little bit more of a pullback here. The range is tightening. We do have our support trend line still intact. I'd say something happens this week on BABA, whether or not that's a big move to the upside up to here at our resistance trend line. That could put it somewhere around 188. 187 based on what time of the week that happens, or we see a breakdown below our support trend line and back into our two moving averages here. That'll sort of offer some temporary support, but I think the larger move could put it back down around 164 or the lower end of the trend line down here, even lower around 156, 157. Like I said, depending on what happens and when. That could be next week, could be the week after, but something does have to happen before this range sort of tightens and squeezes the prices out one way or another. Facebook, sort of similar to BABA, however, we don't have as many touches on the upper resistance part of our trend line. You can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4 touches here, sort of consolidating in between this support trend line and this resistance price level. You can see our 50 SMA is holding prices down right now. One thing important to note is that I've talked about it in last week's video and some videos before this, you always want to compare where these stocks are, the big board stock compared to the market. You can see we have quite a ways until we reach our all-time highs, or not all-time highs, but recent swing highs on Facebook. So is this a bearish signal? Who knows? If we see the market move to the upside and Facebook doesn't even make it to this recent swing high, then I'd say, yeah, that's a bearish move for Facebook, and we would look for a move lower, maybe a violation of this trend line. But right now, I think the focus is on getting over this 191 level. If we break out above, I'd say the target is somewhere up here, where you can see there's some resistance right around, I would just call it 200 just based on the psychological level, but maybe even a little bit sooner around 198.61. We'll draw that in as a reminder there. Triple top, 3 days in a row. And then anything on the downside, 179.62, that would certainly violate our trend line here and put prices back into this very key support zone. If that one gives, I would look for this to be a last ditch effort here at 176.68. That one gives and we're back down to our 200 SMA here. NVDA had a decent week. Again, a healthy little pullback here after a nice move to the upside and a breakout above our resistance trend line. So I think seeing some support in here at 178.68 could be healthy. Nice little consolidation and then another move in the upwards direction. I think the price level resistance here has been adjusted or needs to be adjusted to the upside. Obviously, that's where the resistance is now at 188.40, more recent than that. So look for a move back up to that on any sort of bounce from this support down here. If we see a break down below that, we're looking at 173.47. Anything lower than that is going to be a retest of our resistance trend line, which puts prices somewhere around 170, as well as the 50 SMA starting to catch up to that zone. Microsoft is consolidating a little bit longer than I would have thought. I thought that something was going to happen here based on the fact that we're breaking above our resistance trend line, but we're still holding on to the support, which is a good sign. 50 SMA is starting to level off a little bit, so I think, like I said, after such a great year, essentially, it's perfectly fine for a couple weeks of consolidation and sideways action to occur. I think the target, again, is still a breakout above this 139 level. Again, depending on what the market does, you can see how close it is to its all-time highs with the market, so that's a healthy sign here on Microsoft. Again, if we break above 141.68, our all-time high here, we're playing whole and half dollars on the way up. Anything on the downside, again, we do want to see this trend line support hold up, just because of how important it has been in the past. Anything lower, though, we are looking at 130.67. If we break down lower than that, we are going to be putting in a lower low, which would sort of tarnish the uptrend here on Microsoft. Alrighty, I thought Amazon was going to have a little look above and fail back to the other end of our range here at 1751. However, you can see we are starting to put in a higher low here from here. So higher low, next thing we need to do is put in a higher high, which sort of means coming up and testing our 50 SMA. If we can put in a higher high, I think we might start some small uptrend here. But again, compare how low Amazon is to its swing high as the market is to its all-time high. So there's quite a lot of room here. It's quite low on the totem pole comparatively. Just something to keep in mind. So again, our support's mapped out down here below us. The resistance, again, 50 SMA is the target on the upside. If we break through that, then I think there's some emotional selling in here that will just sort of offer very little resistance, and the next place we sort of go to is this level up here at 1950. We'll draw that in as a reminder just because that's sort of where everything sort of collapsed from. So that's on the upside. Downside, anything below this key support really at 1751 is 1672 down here based on our lows here. So that's going to wrap up this week's episode of the Weekly Watchlist. If you enjoyed the video, leave it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, or you want the trending stock analysis to return, definitely leave me a comment with the tickers you want covered, and we can do that for next week. I just need to see that audience response before I invest the time in making that video. Again, if you're interested in receiving 5 to 10 swing trade ideas, sign up for the newsletter in the link in the description. And as always, I wish you a green trading week.